One morning, Jenny woke up to find everything gone. Not her clothes or passport, but her entire role in a decade-long television saga. No texts from producers, no call sheet, no reunion invite. Her face once splashed across every TLC trailer had vanished. Like it was never there. Sumit checked with one of the assistant coordinators they used to WhatsApp when shoots ran late. No response, not even a blue tick. For years, Jenny and Sumit were the emotional backbone of the franchise. Viewers laughed at their awkward escalator love story, cried when Sumit's mom disowned him, and rooted for this oddball couple to finally get married. Through cultural clashes and health scares, they kept showing up. Cameras rolling, tears real, pain raw, and for what? So TLC could cut the cord without a single explanation, not even a text. Not a wrap gift, not a goodbye interview. 1 minute they were talking plans for the next season, the next they were digital ghosts. No confirmation of cancellation, no statement for the fans. Just radio silence. This wasn't burnout. And no, they didn't quit. Fans had their theories. Health break, creative shift, maybe even retirement. But those who paid attention, they noticed the signs. Edits that felt suspicious. Social media. Silence that wasn't Jenny's style. Minimal references on official TLC pages. Jenny and Sumit didn't disappear. They were erased. And the people who erased them, they didn't act like enemies. That's the scariest part. TLC built its brand on Jenny's tears. Used her heartbreak like clickbait, then acted like she never existed. Not even a thank you clip, not even a storybook ending. They gave more airtime to cashmere goat weddings than to the woman who delivered a whole emotional decade. You're watching TLC Drama Files. I'm Aliva, and if you're ready to hear what the cameras never aired, hit that subscribe now and you tell me in the comments, did you sense something was off too, or did TLC actually manage to fool everyone? Because here's the twist. Jenny didn't fade away. She was frozen out quietly. Deliberately. And from what we've learned, it didn't happen because of drama in front of the camera. It all started with something far more dangerous. A simple question backstage. What got them erased wasn't what they did on the show. It was what they found out behind the scenes. People assumed the silence was normal. Maybe Jenny and Sumit were taking a season off. Maybe they'd pop up in a spin-off, but the signs weren't adding up. Reunion previews came and went and no mention of them. Special event graphics rolled out. Their faces weren't there. Even in nostalgic montages celebrating DOG couples, nothing. The couple who held down years of ratings might as well have never existed. Fans started noticing the blackout. One Reddit thread asked why Jenny and Sumit weren't even shown in flashbacks from the wedding episodes. Another pointed out that on the TLC cast page, their bios were quietly pulled down, replaced by newer couples with shinier, messier drama. The network didn't say they were gone. They made it so you wouldn't even remember they were supposed to be there. And behind the scenes, producers who used to check in often, chat on WhatsApp, even joke during delayed shoots. Radio silence. Not the kind where people are busy. The kind where they're scared to reply. Jenny messaged her usual logistics coordinator asking if the new schedule had been sent. Left unread. No reply. She tried again. Nothing. Eventually, even her red receipts disappeared. One day, Sumit called a junior editor they used to thank during the reunion after party. It rang once. Straight to voicemail. Jenny DM'd a former production assistant when she saw a behind-the-scenes story on Instagram. The message was ignored, then her profile was unfollowed, casual, cold, and complete. They weren't just removed from the show. They were blacklisted from human memory inside the building. Jenny still tried to give producers the benefit of the doubt. She thought maybe they were reshuffling. Maybe international segments were too hard to film post-go. She even floated to Sumit that maybe they were making a new arc focused on new couples. But Sumit had one of those gut instincts you can't shake. Something was off. Too many people had stopped responding at once. Too many familiar faces were pretending not to know them. And then came the toughest realization. No other TLC couple had ever been written out this silently. Even the ones who went out in scandal got some kind of farewell, even if it was messy. Jenny and Sumit, it was like someone had hit delete and told everyone else not to speak their names out loud. That's not oversight. That's instruction. It wasn't just a disappearance. It was a digital deletion ordered from above. For years, Jenny never complained. She showed up, cried on cue, took the hits from trolls, and played her part during every reunion, wearing the same smile even when questioned about her worth. But as time passed, a new cast member started bursting in with chaos, surgeries, and immediate spin-offs. Something didn't feel fair. Jenny had given over a decade. Yet, every check made her feel like background noise. She kept quiet. Until one moment in India flipped the switch. While packing up some old paperwork, she reread one of her original contracts, the one she signed back when she didn't even know what TLC really was. It had no mention of streaming percentages, no royalty clauses, and almost no protections. At the time, she didn't question it. She just wanted to be on the show. But now, years later, that same agreement locked her in, while others got newer, cleaner deals with better terms and more money. Even if they brought half the storylines. She wasn't looking for a fight. All Jenny did was send an email asking if her agreement was due for renewal and if new streaming clauses included platforms like Discovery Plus, Max, or international distribution in markets like Europe and Canada. That's it. She didn't threaten or make noise. She just asked gently, directly, professionally. And that's when the air changed. One assistant producer responded vaguely, saying those questions were outside their scope. Another ghosted entirely. By the third bounce back, Sumit asked a contact he trusted to quietly look into it. What he heard chilled him. Let it go. That was the phrase, not we'll look into it or things are in review. Just let it go. The kind of phrase that comes with invisible iron behind it. Jenny didn't because something about the silence after that innocent question felt louder than every argument she'd ever had with Sumit's mom. She reached out to another staffer she remembered from the season shoot. This time the response was more direct. You shouldn't be looking at that level of detail. Focus on the story. Everything else is already structured. Structured? She had poured out years of her life for this show. How could she not ask why she was still getting paid like she was new while newer couples made double? And still she didn't raise it online. She didn't leak anything. She just stored the silence. She watched as they stopped seesawing her on update threads. She noticed how they were no longer invited to special appearances, and eventually she realized they were being peeled off gently, surgically, and with intent. The moment Jenny asked where the money went, the erasure began. Jenny had seen fake love before. She had lived through Sumit's lies, his secret marriage, public humiliation, and the dragging from his family. But this betrayal felt colder. Colder than being mocked online, colder than being insulted by in-laws. It was the kind of Silence people use when they've already decided you're no longer useful. Inside the network, insiders spilled quietly too. Others. Jenny and Sumit had been tagged. Too stable, too informed, too risky. Whether it was a memo or a whispered instruction during production meetings, the label had stuck. Liability, not. Popular enough to fight for, but not naive enough to handle. And since Jenny had now peeked into areas cast members weren't supposed to, like financial structures and licensing splits, there was only one option left to protect the brand. Step 1, contain. Containment. No more communication, no emails, no messages, no feedback requests on storyline direction, no real explanation, just a gradual shutting of doors. One by one, different departments were quietly told to stop outreach. Marketing no longer included clips of them in trailer campaigns. Press wasn't to mention them to media outlets. They weren't fired. They were frozen. Then came phase 2, freeze out. One editor revealed that TLC quietly circulated an instruction not to feature Jenny and Sumit in upcoming anniversary tributes. They were being cut even from the background. You know those little flashbacks editors insert with iconic facepalms, shocked reactions, or emotional breakdowns for maximum impact. Those usually pull from major players. Jenny's entire archive was blacklisted. No one was allowed to touch it. The last step was deletion through obscurity. No scandal to explain, no controversy to distract, just quiet displacement. Jenny wasn't even a character anymore. Without screen time, she was invisible. Without storylines, she was irrelevant. Without closure, she was unacknowledged. That's when it hit her. She wasn't just off the call sheets. She was being scrubbed from the system she spent a decade helping build. Not because she broke rules, but because she found out how the game was played and had the nerve to ask why she was still stuck on the bottom rung. Sumit kept telling her not to take it personally. But Jenny wasn't naive anymore. This wasn't personal. It was corporate. They didn't need her silence. They needed her absence. They weren't just dropped from a show. They were shut out of an entire identity. Jenny used to be excited every time her phone pinged. A new script, a scheduling notice, a check-in from producers asking about a plot twist. Now, every notification felt like a ghost walking through her mind. Her inbox stayed empty. The silence wasn't loud, it was crushing. She didn't know what broke her more. Being erased from the franchise slowly or realizing nobody behind the cameras cared enough to say goodbye. She still scrolled through old group chats, messages where producers once gushed over her emotional scenes. Texts where they promised her a broader arc next season, emojis, heart reacts, voice notes, comforting then torture now. One by one, those senders had turned into strangers. Even the ones who had cried on set with her now pretended she was a non-person. Sumit, the man who had once told his parents to accept his love or lose him forever, started breaking down in a different way. He had fought the entire weight of tradition, of religion, of generational shame, just to be with Jenny, only for the industry that told their story to act like none of it mattered. People he'd once shared production meals with now warned current castmates in whispers. Don't ask about Jenny. Don't message Sumit, don't dig into old payment ratifications. It'll only cause problems. Every time Jenny thought of posting something vague online, a quote, a song lyric, an old memory, her stomach twisted. Could someone from TLC take it personally? Would she get an email warning her about her NDA? Because even though she hadn't received public threats, the silence itself had teeth. She didn't need a lawsuit slapped on her desk to feel the weight of legal fear. The message was already delivered. You're not in control. We are NDAs, which once felt like stiff paperwork. Now felt more like handcuffs. Not literal chains, but binding just enough to make you second-guess a sentence. And they knew it. That's exactly why silence worked better than confrontation. If they had argued, it would have given Jenny power. But by ignoring her, they stole the ground from underneath her. She couldn't scream if there was no one to hear. Sumit didn't fare better. He tried reaching out to a junior coordinator, someone young who used to share leftover snacks with the crew. They responded once. Careful. Don't push. That was all he got. That wasn't advice. That was warning. Legal. Silence, unspoken threats, and the fear of retaliation twisted emotional damage into professional exile. Their existence had been mined for content. Their sacrifices sold to viewers. Now their identity was a legal liability. Jenny stayed inside more, slept less, ate almost nothing. She kept saying, I thought we mattered. Years, and it ended with a block list. At least Sumit's family was honest with their rejection. The network wore a smile while pulling the trigger. As Jenny and Sumit vanished from the screen without a whisper, another couple burned across it like a fireball. Gino and Jasmine, the franchise's most combustible pair, handed TLC the exact kind of chaos that kept tweets flying and ratings high. 1 minute they were arguing about attitude, and the next Gino dropped accusations of marriage fraud, dollar, allegedly stolen, and a threat to call immigration. Fans were glued to it, Jasmine screaming, Gino standing ice cold as if he practiced the line in the mirror. You immigrated to me, Jasmine. You'll hear from them soon. Viewers clutched their remotes. Reddit caught fire. X exploded. Clips of Jasmine crying while holding her stomach went viral. And in the middle of that explosion, something else quietly slid off the radar. The silent purge of Jenny and Sumit. People were too busy gawking at Gino's lawsuit tease to ask why one of the long-strung couples had disappeared mid-franchise. Was this brilliant timing? Or something hand-picked in the editing booth? Chaos sells. Quiet cuts don't go. Trending. By the time fans noticed, Jenny still hadn't turned up for a reunion or even a single shout-out. The season had already shifted. The internet was drowning in Jasmine content. And if you were TLC, that's all you needed to keep scrutiny off what was really happening backstage. Now, here's where reality show math gets interesting. Couples with fresh fights and sky-high reactions get renewed. Sometimes even when they explicitly refuse. Contracts are sweetened. Scenes are stretched with dramatic music. TLC knew exactly what they were doing. Jasmine collapsing into sobs made for great reels. Jenny sobbing quietly in an empty apartment, not useful, not profitable. And in that contrast was the truth. TLC didn't support drama. They controlled it. And when a couple started asking about money, contracts, and royalties they'd never seen, that drama became dangerous. Jenny's tears weren't on cue anymore. They were personal. Sumit's quiet glare wasn't for a scripted arc. It was disappointment, real, raw, and pointed. And that's what made them too much of a risk. So, while fans debated whether Jasmine should be deported or defended, Jenny and Sumit sat at home watching a network build attention around betrayal, while bearing the one betrayal they don't want you to look at. While Jasmine sobbed on camera, Jenny cried in silence. Off-screen, and only one got paid for it. It started with a slip. An intern forwarded the wrong version of a file, and Jenny saw what she was never meant to see. A single screenshot of itemized compensation. Her name wasn't on it, but names of new cast members were. Couples who hadn't lasted 2 seasons. People who filmed a few chaotic arguments and walked away with checks double hers. Some were even getting streaming bonuses and back-end bumps for content that aired overseas. Jenny stared at it, confused. She didn't care much for spreadsheets, but she cared about fairness. When she quietly mentioned the discrepancy to someone in casting, not to accuse, not to threaten, just to clarify, the atmosphere shifted faster. Then a lighting change mid-interview. Silence came again, but this time it felt sharp, cold, clean. Days later, more odd things happened. Her access to internal portals expired. Her email credential with TLC disabled. Sumit's welcome messages in shared crew groups deleted. It didn't take long before someone from the inside, someone who'd once walked their dog during breaks, messaged them privately and said the words, "You're being contained." Jenny asked what that meant. "Just be careful." Someone high up said, "Freeze. Out." That was the internal language. No alarms, no fights, just covert shut down. Strip them of communication. Isolate the account. Instruct departments not to respond. Legal. Doesn't need to argue if you're smart enough to scare them into silence. Because if Jenny talked, really talked, about schedules, royalties, global licensing, fair rates versus fame, exploitation, she wasn't just an unhappy cast member anymore. She was a risk, a witness, a woman who'd been poked, prodded, and controlled for a decade. Finally realizing she'd been working under an outdated contract they never thought she'd read again. People inside the network began whispering among themselves, making excuses. Some said they should have known better. Others said she was never supposed to see that. But the more honest ones said it plainly, they asked to be treated like they mattered. And suddenly, everyone stopped treating them like anything at all. Jenny and Sumit weren't a disruption until they asked to be equal. They weren't a problem while crying on camera, but once they tried to change the arrangement that commodified their pain, the system snapped shut. She didn't leak anything. She didn't bash the show. She didn't expose producers or post NDAs online. She stayed quiet even after losing everything. Jenny didn't betray the show. She believed in it too much. Silence sounds different when it's forced. For Jenny, it echoed. First in the spaces where producers used to check in, then in the empty notifications, the absence of filming updates, the complete blackout across platforms that once begged for her storyline. She didn't realize how much of her identity had been tied into being Jenny from day until it slipped away and no one watched her go. She wasn't a cast member anymore. But she wasn't just a normal person either. The in-between was unbearable. She couldn't casually walk through a market in Delhi without being recognized. But she couldn't post on camera without wondering if it would trigger a legal warning. Fame had turned into a purgatory. Too public to heal privately, too silenced to respond publicly. Every time she looked in the mirror, it wasn't aging that bothered her. It was the haunting feeling that she'd handed over her most painful moments to a machine that didn't just slice her off quietly. It made sure no one in the building ever said her name again. Producing that many years of your life for television requires a kind of surrender. You let go of privacy. You start choosing clothes based on what reads well on camera. You cry for real knowing it'll be edited. You hold your breath during interviews. Because anything can be twisted into a sound bite. And Jenny did all that. She gave them every ounce of vulnerability. Sumit watched it all play out, helpless. The man who once defied an entire generation of expectations for Jenny now faced a new kind of rejection he couldn't fight. Invisible silence, no confrontation. No headlines, just cold erasure. A weapon you can't swing back at because it never speaks. He told friends privately that nothing, not the fights with his mom, not the public mockery, ever made him feel smaller than the day a producer who used to cheer for them started avoiding eye contact. That's when he knew this wasn't temporary. This was permanent, planned, and personal. Not chaotic enough to protect, not marketable enough to keep. And now too aware to allow around. Jenny stopped bringing up TLC in regular conversation, not because she was over it, but because talking about it made her cry, sometimes unexpectedly mid-sentence. The weight of confusion was too much. How do you explain being betrayed by silence? You don't, you just go numb. At night, she played old voice notes from a segment director who once said she was the emotional core of the season. Played them like old songs from a friend who used to be alive. She'd scroll back through DMs filled with cast dinners, birthday greetings from crew members, bloopers they never aired, and promises made in casual text threads, all gone. She was replaced, not just cast-wise, but algorithmically. Her face was removed from trailers. Episodes where she and Sumit carried full arcs were pushed to the bottom of suggested playlists. Even newcomers who burned out after a season had more Instagram engagement. The worst part, Jenny was still under contract. Sort of. The kind of contract that binds you without offering support. Sumit asked legal questions carefully. They had no entertainment lawyers, no publicist, no agent vetting their deals. TLC knew that. It's why they were convenient. And it's also why they were disposable once they started paying attention. Jenny sometimes wondered, did she deserve this? Was asking for transparency too much? Was not settling quietly the deal breaker? Back home, her days grew quieter. The phones didn't buzz. The door didn't knock. She wasn't filming. She wasn't preparing for anything. Even their personal milestones, anniversaries, holidays, health updates didn't feel celebratory. Everything was under a fog of grief that no one acknowledged. She no longer felt like a star. But even worse, she didn't feel human in the narrative anymore. She was a deleted scene. A tab that had been silently closed without saving. Sumit tried to distract her. He cooked more. He reminded her that their love was real, even if the show made it look performative. But she had no outlet. Talking online felt dangerous. Talking to press wasn't even an option. TLC had used their NDA like a loaded silence. And fans, many believed they'd walked away. Some thought they had a break, a baby, a secret project. Others said, maybe it's for the best. They had their time. But supporters who looked closely could see the glitch. See how the cleanup was too perfect. No slip-ups, no hashtags, no crossover cameos. Cast members were warned not to include Jenny or Sumit in throwbacks. Quiet contracts. Quiet removals, controlled forgettings. That's what twisted the knife. They weren't fired. They were written out of an emotional legacy they helped co-own. Jenny wasn't bitter for the fame. She was grieving the rewrite. The part where her name got deleted from the very history she bled for. TLC had enough of them. Enough clips. Enough crisis. Enough breakdowns. But once they wanted answers, that was too much. So they blocked them. Not just on socials, on every level imaginable. All Jenny had left were questions. One still haunting her at night. Where did loyalty go? What were they protecting? And most of all, how could years end without a single person simply saying, thank you? They gave America a love story. TLC gave them a forgetting. Hate you can see coming. You brace for it. You get ready to defend yourself, to clap back, to cry, to yell, or to fight. It's loud. It's ugly, but it's visible. Silence. Silence is surgical. You don't hear it. You just feel it. Closing in, cutting deep. Draining your confidence till there's nothing left but second guesses and sleepless nights. Jenny could have handled outrage. She handled it before. She faced Sumit's mother calling her old and shameful on camera. She faced racism from strangers online. She faced judgment from fans who thought she was desperate. And through it all, she stayed standing. But she wasn't built for this. Being iced out of her own identity without a single confrontation, not even a fake apology, not even the courtesy of an awkward send-off. She used to wake up ready to film. Now she wakes up checking if the few contacts in her phone have finally blocked her. She wants to post a photo, then stops. Maybe someone on the TLC side will see it. Maybe they'll use it as an excuse to say she broke some line of her contract, so she deletes it. Then tries again later with a flower emoji, then deletes that too. It sounds small, but it's the kind of fear that stays. Not threats, not lawsuits, just the implied punishment of being watched. Not as a person, but as a liability wrapped in legal tape. Sumit told her to share a throwback once, a wedding photo the fans loved. She said no. She said it didn't feel safe. He couldn't promise her it would be. And that hit him harder than anything his parents ever said. Back then, he could protect her from everything. Culture, clashes, community whispers, even a secret marriage. Now, he couldn't protect her from a blackout where the power switch lived somewhere they couldn't reach. Jenny stopped emailing. She stopped asking for updates. She stopped hoping because hope came with heartbreak. She had already dealt with audiences laughing at her tears. Now, she was dealing with the worst kind of rejection, the kind dressed as total silence. What made it worse was how complete it was. Not a single producer messaged privately. No back channel apologies. No one inside reached out with even the simplest text, "You okay?" That hurt more than the contract itself, more than missing payments, more than being skipped from promos. The fact that not one person, not even the ones who used to say she felt like family, thought it was worth giving her closure. She started blaming herself. Should she have stayed quiet? Should she have kept smiling while watching others get wet? She never did? Should she have faked ignorance, kept filming, acted grateful? Was asking questions the real betrayal? She asked Sumit more than once. Did I ruin this? He said no every time, but she saw it in his eyes. He didn't know anymore. The damage felt too big to carry on faith alone. Even their silence had become a performance. Posting nothing was the only way to survive. Talking about financials, off limits. Hinting at contracts on stories, dangerous. Dropping quotes about betrayal, risky. Every keystroke could turn into a problem. Every caption could open a door they didn't want knocked again. So, they just stopped talking. Not because they didn't have a story, but because the network counted on their silence. Jenny once flipped through an old gratitude journal she started when filming began. She stopped writing in it after season. Her last entry read, "I hope this ends with peace." She read it aloud one night and sobbed, not because the dream didn't come true, but because it ended before she knew it was done. Hate has edges. It sparks back. But this was like trying to scream underwater. The silence broke her creativity, broke her joy, broke her Sense of place in the world. The woman who once stood her ground through cultural rejection now floated aimlessly. Not a villain, not a hero, just edited out. Even fan pages treaded carefully. Some messaged her in support. Others went quiet, too, unsure what crossing the invisible TLC line might trigger. Everyday life didn't feel normal anymore. When fans spotted her in public, she smiled, thanked them, took photos. But inside, she felt like a ghost. A version of herself everyone remembered, but no one in charge would ever acknowledge again. For years, people joked she'd outlast Sumit's mom, that she'd finally get the happy ending. But the brutal twist, her real heartbreak wasn't on screen. It came later in silence, in isolation, in realizing she was too loyal for a game that never played fair. The scariest part is that TLC didn't argue. They erased and pretended it never happened. TLC built an empire on drama, but it stood tall because of stories like Jenny and Sumit's love that fought against norms. Sacrifices made in front of millions. Emotional breakdowns captured in K. This wasn't just entertainment. It was someone's real life packaged and streamed for profit across countries and seasons. And still, when the network got what it needed, it left them with nothing. No thank you, no closure, just darkness, millions of viewers, viral clips, streaming reruns, merch tie-ins, international licensing deals, corporate wins all around. But for Jenny and Sumit, ghosting, the kind that doesn't come with screams or scandal, just a system quietly doing what it's designed to do. Discard, replace, move on. They didn't just lose screen time. They lost community. Jenny stopped getting DMs from cast members. Sumit noticed even fan accounts hesitated to tag him. The pages that once posted their love story turned their focus to messier couples with newer faces. The algorithm moved on. Their legacy made up of seasons of raw vulnerability got buried under flashy new drama. At first, Jenny tried to keep smiling. She found small joys in gardening, cooking, even rewatching old footage. For a second, she felt proud. But pride doesn't pay the bills. And silence doesn't heal when it's manufactured by intention. She wondered if her story even belonged to her anymore. If she spoke out, who would listen? Worse, would someone from TLC twist her silence into breach of contract? Were they still watching, waiting? So, she didn't speak. She breathed small, moved quietly online, posted filtered sunsets, nothing emotional because speaking up didn't end Jenny's story. It ended her access. Sumit saw it in her. The way she avoided the camera on her phone, how her posture changed when fans asked if they'd return to the show. She never snapped. She never vented. She just nodded and deflected with kindness and changed the subject. That's what happens when you've been erased quietly. You start shrinking yourself before someone else has to. Still, even with everything taken, something lived on. Underneath the loss was a trace of defiance. The same kind that brought Jenny halfway across the world to be with the man she loved. The same one that kept them filming season after season despite judgment, racism, classism, and ageism. Their story might have been silenced by a legal machine, but it still exists in the minds of those who watched every teardrop, every scare, every wedding delay, every fight for dignity. TLC might have buried them, but fans remember. Jenny's not the kind to go rogue. She won't leak messages, stir drama for clickbait, or throw dirt just to land on a podcast. But there's a reason her presence still lingers, even in silence. Because people know authenticity when they see it, and they watch this couple bleed on screen with nothing held back. You don't forget that. If anything, the eraser itself became the loudest confirmation that something wasn't right. People started getting curious. Threads resurfaced. Questions came up. Why wasn't Jenny invited back to wrap up her story? Why didn't she get the editing style given to others who left? Why did TLC choose to amplify chaos while deleting real hard-earned resolution? None of it made sense. Unless you understood it wasn't about entertainment by that point. It was about control. The tight, precise control of a billion-dollar industry that knows how to make people vanish when they become inconvenient. No fiery exit. No bad PR, no fallout, just a quiet withdrawal from all sides until even loyal fans second-guess your memory. But here's what no network can fully control. Connection. Jenny and Sumit weren't perfect. Their story was messy, layered, uncomfortable at times, but it clicked with people. It stayed through the culture war, the age difference, the in-law drama. People watched because it felt real. And real doesn't go away. They may not have the cameras now. They may be legally bound, emotionally scarred, digitally ghosted, but their fight isn't forgotten. You can take their paycheck, their platform, their presence from your storyline, but you can't erase what millions of people already lived with them. And maybe one day, if the grip loosens just enough, if the legal walls finally crack from fan pressure, they will speak in full. They'll tell their side, not with bitterness, but with brutal reflection and clarity. Until then, their silence isn't surrender. It's survival. Because Jenny never chased fame. She chased love. Sumit never chased controversy. He chased freedom. And together, they gave a franchise years of honest content before they were quietly cut for doing the one thing that mattered, asking to be valued. Remember that. Erasing them may have worked. Unless we keep telling their story.